Aaron and Luke have just moved into a modest, two-story house in the outskirts of a quiet town. It's the kind of place that feels safe, peaceful, with tree-lined streets and well-kept lawns. The couple, in their late 20s, had left the chaos of city life behind in hopes of finding some peace. Aaron, a writer, and Luke, an architect, both want a slower pace and a fresh start after a series of personal setbacks, lost jobs, a miscarriage, and the general pressures of life. At first, everything seems perfect. The neighbors are friendly but distant, and the house, though old, is charming. They spend the first few weeks settling in, unpacking boxes, and enjoying the quiet. But as time passes, Aaron starts to notice strange things, slight, but unsettling. One night, she finds the back door slightly ajar. She could have sworn she locked it. Luke dismisses it as a mistake, but Aaron feels uneasy. A few days later, she finds a window in the attic open when she's certain she hadn't touched it. Again, Luke brushes it off, attributing it to the house settling. But Aaron can't shake the feeling that someone has been inside. The incidents grow more frequent. Aaron starts to hear footsteps in the hallway at night, faint whispers just beyond her hearing. It's always at odd hours, early morning or late at night when she and Luke are supposed to be alone. When she checks, the house is empty. One evening, while Luke is out of town for work, Aaron discovers a collection of old photographs hidden in the attic. They're pictures of previous owners of the house, families that look eerily similar, though each one has a different name written on the back. One photo catches her attention, a young woman standing in front of the house, looking directly at the camera with an unsettling expression. The back of the photo reads, "Don't let them find you." The following night, as Aaron tries to fall asleep, she hears the unmistakable sound of someone breathing in the dark. She's paralyzed with fear but is too afraid to move, convinced someone is standing beside the bed. When she finally works up the courage to turn on the light, there's nothing there, just the oppressive silence of the room. But as she lies back down, her phone buzzes with a message, "I see you." When Luke returns, Aaron tells him everything. He listens patiently, but as much as he wants to believe her, the rational side of him can't help but chalk it up to stress, sleep deprivation, and a little bit of imagination. However, things take a darker turn when Aaron starts to receive strange calls, silence on the other end, followed by a soft, almost imperceptible breathing sound. They occur at all hours, and when Aaron tries to trace the calls, the number is always blocked. One night, Luke comes home late from work to find the back door wide open, the living room light on, and Aaron sitting motionless in the middle of the room, her eyes vacant. She doesn't respond when he calls her name. He rushes over, shaking her awake, but all she can say is, "He's here." Desperate for answers, Aaron begins to research the house's history. She finds old newspaper clippings about a tragic murder-suicide that occurred in the house over 30 years ago. The story tells of a man, Samuel Harper, who killed his wife and young daughter before disappearing without a trace. The neighbors had always claimed to hear strange noises coming from the house long after it had been abandoned. The final straw comes one night when Aaron is home alone again. As she sits in the living room, she hears the doorbell ring. She looks through the peephole but sees nothing. Her heart races as she slowly opens the door. Standing there, just outside the threshold, is a man, a stranger, his face obscured by shadows. His voice is quiet but distinct, "I know you're in there." Before she can react, the door slams shut on its own, the windows rattle, and the lights flicker. She runs to the phone to call Luke, but the line is dead. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything goes silent. The next morning, Aaron finds Luke standing in the kitchen, pale and disoriented. He claims to have seen someone standing outside the window last night, just after he spoke with Aaron on the phone. But when he went to investigate, no one was there. They decide to call the police. As the officers investigate, they uncover something horrifying. Hidden within the walls of the house are remnants of a journal, written by a previous occupant, Samuel Harper himself. The journal is filled with rambling, paranoid thoughts. Harper had believed that someone, something, was following him, watching him from within the house. His writings grow increasingly incoherent, and in the final entry, he writes, "She's back. She won't let me leave." The police find traces of old blood in the attic, along with a locked door hidden behind a wall. When they break it down, they find nothing but an empty room, its only feature a tall mirror on the far wall, cracked and coated in dust. But as they search, Erin feels an overwhelming sense of dread, as if something is staring at her from behind the glass. After leaving the house behind, Erin and Luke try to rebuild their lives, renting a small apartment in a new city. They attempt to settle into normalcy, but the shadow of the house hangs over them. Erin's sleep is haunted by vivid nightmares of the mirror, the man at the door, and that oppressive feeling of being watched. Luke, who once seemed the more rational of the two, starts to exhibit strange behavior, paranoia, insomnia, and a nervous energy that was never there before. The nightmares become worse. Erin dreams of walking through the empty house, but this time, something is different. The house isn't as it seemed when they left it. Now, it feels alive, shifting with each step she takes. She's drawn to the attic once more, to the mirror. But when she tries to look into it, her reflection is no longer hers. Instead, it's the man from the doorway, the stranger. His eyes are filled with malice, and as Erin tries to back away, the reflection grins at her, a cold, knowing grin. Erin wakes in a cold sweat, terrified and shaking. But when she turns to Luke for comfort, he's not in bed. The apartment is eerily quiet. Luke's disappearance sends Erin into a frantic search. She calls his phone, no answer. She races through the apartment, searching every room, but it's as if he has vanished into thin air. Panic grips her chest as she tries calling his family, friends, anyone she can think of, but it's as if he never existed. The next few days are a blur. Erin falls into a spiral of anxiety and dread. She reaches out to a therapist, hoping for some relief, but nothing helps. It's as if the house has followed them. Every creak, every shadow seems to remind her of what she fled. One night, she returns home after an unsuccessful search for Luke and finds a small package waiting at her doorstep. It's an old, weathered photograph, her and Luke, standing in front of their apartment building, taken from the shadows. The back of the photo is scribbled with a message: she's waiting. Determined to find Luke, Erin returns to the town, now a place she thought she had escaped. But when she arrives at the old house, she is confronted with an unsettling discovery. The house is still there, unchanged, but somehow, it feels even more oppressive, as though it has grown stronger in her absence. The familiar sensations of being watched begin to take over her mind once again. Erin tracks down the old neighbors, who are now too frightened to speak openly, but one elderly woman finally tells her what she knows. Years ago, the Harper family wasn't the only tragedy connected to that house. It had been a place of repeated misfortune. Families who lived there all seemed to be drawn into some kind of madness or disappearance. The house was rumored to have a dark history, of being built on land that once belonged to a cult obsessed with creating perfect reflections, something Erin now realizes may have been part of the house's very foundation. The woman speaks of a legend, one that had been whispered through the generations, the legend of a cursed mirror, a mirror that could steal a person's soul if they gazed into it long enough. The last family that lived there, the Harpers, had been consumed by the curse after Samuel Harper's obsession with the mirror drove him to madness. But the most chilling part of the story comes when the woman tells Erin that the curse doesn't just end when you leave. It follows you. The house doesn't let go. It finds ways to drag you back. Back in the apartment, Erin's sense of reality begins to crumble. She starts hearing whispers again, soft and insistent, just out of reach. Her own reflection in the mirrors seems to act independently, sometimes smiling when she isn't, other times making faces that distort her own. One evening, she returns home to find Luke in the mirror. Not just his reflection, but the physical presence of him, standing in the living room, just beyond the glass, his eyes hollow and devoid of recognition. He doesn't respond when she calls his name. Desperately, Erin confronts the mirror, pressing her hand against its cold surface. As she does, she hears Luke's voice, muffled but real, calling out to her from the other side. His voice grows more frantic, more desperate, pleading for her to join him. The mirror cracks, but instead of breaking apart, the shards reflect 1,000 faces, faces of people who have come before them, trapped in the glass. Erin knows in that moment that she has no choice. The curse isn't just tied to the house, it's tied to them, to her and Luke. The mirror wasn't just a reflection of the past, it was a portal, a gateway to something far darker. The house was only the vessel, the mirror was the anchor. As the mirror shattered, Erin was faced with a choice: become a part of the house forever or face the terrifying unknown. In that moment, she realized the truth. The only way to escape Luke's grip was to sever the connection between them. With every ounce of strength, Erin reached into the shattered glass, pulling herself free from the mirror's pull. She broke the cycle. She chose to let go of the house, choosing freedom, even if it meant facing an uncertain future. As she stepped outside, the house behind her crumbled, its foundation collapsing as Luke's presence faded into nothingness. The whispers stopped. The shadows vanished. Erin turned back, looking one last time at the cottage. It was over, but deep within, she knew the truth: there would always be a piece of her that would never leave. The visitor hadn't just been Luke, it had been the house itself. And someday, it might call to her again.